IT.E, not mine.
Okay, so today's all about really important sort of computer science stuff, and in other words, building your ability to create algorithms. So we're not going to do very much new stuff today, but we're going to write loads of, well, I should say we, I mean of course you, are going to write loads of programs and processing today to do things, to manipulate arrays. So we could type lots of data into the computer, and then we'll have lots of data to play with, but that obviously is going to be very time wasting. So I have a data set that we can work on today. Who can tell me what a data set is?
Bunch of raw data?
Just a bunch of raw data. This actually is a bunch of raw data from everybody's favorite app, which is of course Cumpal. Thank you. Yeah, so this is a bunch of data from last year. It's basically the daily queries from Android devices and from iOS devices, and we'll be able to hopefully try and answer some questions like what was the most popular day of the year for queries, what was the most popular month of the year, which days had more Android queries versus iOS queries, things like that. So I'll show you what the data set looks like, and it's up on the GitHub. If you can get onto the GitHub, because you need to download this file, right? See that Cumpal data for the class? In particular, what you need to download, you can download the whole lot, right? But in particular, inside this data folder here, there's a file called cumpalqueries.csv. And that's what's called a comma-separated values file. What's a comma-separated values file? That's an easy one. Clues in the question. Yes, so it's just a text file made with, if you like, actually this is made with Excel. But it just has, the values are just separated with a comma. GitHub is actually rendering that kind of nicely and showing it to us as a HTML table. But if we download that file, I'll show you what it looks like. So it's in here in a folder called data, and it's called cumpalqueries.csv. And if I open that up in this file, which is just Notepad++. How many people have Notepad++ installed? If you haven't got it installed, you should probably install it. It's probably the best text editor for Windows. There's one other one that I use called Markdown. You can see it's just three sets of data. The first one is just a number, okay? So that number goes from 1 up as far as 365. So there's one there for every day of the year. There's a number. And the second column is the number of music searches that were made from an Android device on that day. So 96 was the 1st of January. These are from last year. These are 2013. And then 309 were made from iOS devices on the same day. So we'll load that data up into a processing sketch, and we'll graph it, and we'll answer various questions about it. Right? We'll try and figure out what was the average number of queries, what was the combined total number of music searches in a year, things like that. So just to begin this whole exercise, right? And just to be clear about how these array things work. I'm sure you all remember this from last year, but just there's a few little differences in processing as to how arrays work. So if I start out and just put a void setup in there, and a void draw, but I might not even use the draw. Okay, first of all, how do I create an array in processing? Say I want to create an array of integers. I'm going to write a little program to calculate the average. Yeah?
Int square bracket.
Okay, so you go int open square bracket, close square bracket like that. So that's the type for an array in processing. So when you do the square brackets like that, it indicates that it's an integer array as opposed to a single integer. By the way, what's an array?
List variables?
A list of, yeah, it's a list of data or variables. What's the significance about this list?
The data has to be of one type.
Yeah, the data is all of the same type. So this is basically saying that this is a piece of data. All elements in this data are going to be integer values, okay? And we're going to have a certain number of these integer values that we can hold. So you go int open square bracket, close square brackets, and then let's just call this ages, okay? So we're going to make it an array of ages. Now, at the moment, this array, this is our first introduction to what are called objects in Java or processing, because this actually is now an object, all right? And objects in programming have properties and methods on them. So the properties are things like data that holds about it. So if you think of an array, one thing that an array knows about itself is it knows how many elements are in the array. Okay, so you don't know. It's not like in C where you have to like have a hash defined number of elements, or maybe have a variable to hold it. The array itself knows how many elements are in it, and then the array allows you to get things into the array and get things out of the array by using the square bracket notation. But initially, this is an array with no elements in it. Okay, and it has no size. At this stage, if you try and get the size of that array, you'll get what's called a null pointer exception, because we haven't actually allocated any memory for the array at this point. So to allocate memory for the array, if you do it here, it doesn't really matter, or you can do it up here in the setup. You can go ages equals new int, and then open square brackets like that, and you say how many elements you want this array to hold. So if I want to hold maybe 5 elements in this array, you just go equals new int 5, open close, and square brackets like that. So that's the syntax for allocating memory for the array. So now I have an array with 5 elements in it. Unlike C as well, if you don't put anything into that array, what are the default values in the C program?
0. Random.
They're random. They're whatever happens to be in the computer's memory at that point. But in processing and in Java and C# and a lot of other languages, the default values in the array are 0. If you go and print out the array, you'll find that it'll have all zeros in it. Okay, so that's how we allocate an array. Next thing we might want to do is, say I want to just iterate the array, and I'm going to put some random values in there, okay? I can go to iterate through that array, for int I equals 0, semicolon I is less than ages dot length. And so this is just a for loop. It's going to start at the 0th element and go up as far as the number of elements that are in the array. Why do we not go I is less than or equals to ages dot length? Why is it less than ages dot length?
Because
Yep, because the array starts at 0 and the last index in the array is 1 less than the number of elements. So if the array has got 5 elements in it, the indexing goes from 0 to 4. So we want to jump out as soon as I becomes ages.length. We don't want to iterate anymore. Yeah.
Is the difference between having the square bracket at the in, after the int, or after the ages? Even where you have, say, the square brackets after the int, you have the ages. Does it make a difference?
It doesn't make a difference. I didn't know you could do that, actually. Wasn't too sure. I know you can do that in C. I think that's the syntax in C. But I thought that was the syntax in Java or processing. But I guess it doesn't make any difference, huh? I don't think so. I'll check. So there we go. So we're going to start at I, go up as far as the number of elements, and then plus plus I, or I plus plus. So that's going to iterate through the array. If I want to put a random value in there, let's go ages at position I is equals to, and we'll pick a random value. Oh, now this should be okay. If I want to say a random value between 0 and 10, just a quick one for you. That random, does that return an integer or a float? Can anyone tell me? It returns a float. So it'll return you a float which is somewhere between 0 and it'll be 9.999, so you'll never actually get 10 out of it. In actual fact, if I convert this to an integer, then I'm going to get values between 0 and 9, but it doesn't matter. I think it's worth trying this out. Let's say between 0 and 20, 0 and 9, we'll say 0 and 10, and we'll just print them out then, okay? So ages, let's just do println. Ages at position I. So essentially in the first place I'm putting stuff into the array, and in the second stuff I'm getting stuff out of the array and printing it out. So let's just run that and make sure that that's work okay. And there we go, there's my random values put into the array, and you can see them getting printed out there at the bottom of the processing sketch. So just to show you, there's another way of allocating arrays. If you want to allocate an array from a list of integer constants, you can allocate your array like this as well. So let's put some numbers in here. You with the red there, what's your age? 21, lovely. Next, what's your age? 21. What's your age?
Not there.
You can say 21, it's okay, but pick a different name. Pick a different number.
23.
Let's go 25, right?
Oh, thanks.
That's a
You
good
could have got 19.
No, like
That's my
okay, I'm gonna put my age in then next, right? What's your age? 19. Okay, so we're all kind of hovering around. Okay, I'll put my real age in here because I'm not ashamed. So there's some numbers. So that's a way of initializing an array from a list of constants. So if I do 10, what will I get? You get 5 because it's got 5 elements in it. Okay. So that's, like I said, that's a way of initializing the array from a list of constants. So I can get rid of all of this, and then if I print out the elements in the array, what's wrong with the syntax there?
It doesn't see curly brackets.
What's that?
It's saying curly brackets when you expect it.
Maybe you can only do that here. I think when you initialize an array like that, you have to do it kind of all into one line. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's interesting. That was a good learning experience. So now I know that if I initialize an array like that, you have to do it all into one line. You can't do it as 2 separate lines. Otherwise, I guess it's a dynamic array. So that will work. Like that. Okay, is that alright with everybody? Okay, so it's time for you guys to write a small program. Will you write a small addition to this program to calculate the average age? And while you're at it, calculate the minimum age and the maximum age. And while you're doing that, I will change this program around just slightly. So instead of initializing like that, okay, let's do this. So we'll kind of do it all in one go, and there's loads of ways. In fact, we'll do them all in one for loop, but we'll do the average first of all. So because I want this probably the average number to be have something after the decimal point. I'll make it a float rather than an int, and then sum plus equals to ages at position I. So that's going to add them all up together, and then average is going to be equals to sum divided by ages dot length, and then I can print. Okay, is that alright with everybody? Everyone get something similar to that? Okay, so we'll do the minimum and maximum then as well. How do you guys normally do minimum and maximum? Who did the minimum and maximum then? How do you normally do it? Sure, like, do you go something like int min is equals to something? Or how do you do it? What did you do? What's that? The maximum meant that it can be plus 1. Sure. How do you calculate that?
You could have a variable and say variable plus 1. Sorry,
Yeah. Okay, so how would you know the maximum value that it possibly could be?
Well, between, the random.
Oh, sure. So you set it to be 101, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. That will work as well. You can actually set it to be the maximum value for an integer. All right. So let me just check. I think it's integer. I need to Google this. Is it integer.max?
No,
It's something like that. I'm used to
That's a waste of first loop
yeah.
first element.
You want a smaller value.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out what it is. I know what it is in C#, I can't remember what it is in Java.
Is I greater than nothing.
Okay, max value. I think that will do it.
Why do you have all I equals 0?
To make sure that the first value is correct.
Where's your round? Through the array.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, cool. So that seems to have compiled, okay. Okay, so, yeah. So this is the strategy. For the minimum, we'll set the minimum value to be the maximum possible value that an integer can be. And then I want to go through all of this element by element. And I want to say if ages at position I is less than the minimum value, the minimum value is going to be equals to ages at position I. So we'll test to make sure that that prints out. That works properly. Before we move on. Minimum is 0. Okay, so if I set my random value there to be 10, then hopefully the minimum should be somewhere between 10 and 100. It could be 10. Minimum is 10. Alright, great. So, yeah, does anyone have a quick look at that and ask any questions about it before I move on?
It seems to be giving out using lower limit consistently.
What's that?
When it was minimum, when the minimum value of random was 0, it gave you 0.
Yes.
Minimum 10 gives you 10.
Sure. Probably because I'm generating 100 random numbers, and like if I run this 100 times, it won't always be 0.
Oh, right.
You know, it's just that it happens to be 0.
Oh, you're generating 100.
I'm generating 100. Like if I generate less than
What's the
100,
size of the array?
I make it 100. If I make it 5, then chances are it's not going to be the value of 10. It will be some other value. Okay, so this time the minimum is 41.
Right.
So, okay. If I make 100 of them, yeah.
It's probably
Right, so if you look at that little bit of code there, hopefully everyone can understand that. I set the minimum to be some really big number initially. And then the first time I come through in the for loop, I'm going to compare the 0th element of the array with the minimum, and of course it's going to be less. Does everybody see that? It has to be less because the minimum is initially set to be the maximum possible value. So then minimum becomes ages array at position 0. And then from there on I'm going to compare each element. So that's one way to do it. We can do the same strategy for the maximum value. So max is going to be integer dot. This time it should be the min value. Right, so the min value is a really small number. In fact, it's a negative number. And then I can say if ages at position I is greater than the max value, which of course it will be the first time, the max is equals to ages at position I. So there's the max value. Okay, hopefully that's going to work. We'll just double check to make sure it works. And the maximum value is 99 in that case. Alright, does everybody understand that? Anybody wants to ask any questions? Yes.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what's happening at the main value or not.
Yeah. So, I'll show you what we can do here. What I can do is I'll just print out those values here before we go into this loop, right? So just to see what the minimum and max values are before we go into the loop, right? When I run that program there, if I scroll up here a little bit, I will see that before I go into the loop, the minimum value is that really huge number. And the maximum value is that really, really negative number. Is that okay? That's before I go into the loop. Then when I go into the loop, the first thing I do is I check the value on the array held at position number 0 to see if it's greater than the maximum. And of course it will be greater than the maximum because the maximum is a really negative number. So then the maximum becomes the one at element number 0. And then the next time around I'm comparing element, with the second or the first element with the one at position number 0, and then if that's less, it will become the new minimum, and if it's greater, then it will become the new maximum. Does that make sense? You sure? Cool.
Can you have the random variable pick from negative numbers as well?
You can do, yeah. Just specify, like that will go from -10 up as far as 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a question, see where you have min plus max to sprint it out in
Yeah.
both stats.
Of course.
If you
Min plus min and max plus max.
Instead of the plus, if you did a comma, would that work?
No.
I know in some languages you can do that.
That's right, yeah, but not in Java. What's happening there is it's concatenating two strings. It will take the second value, convert it to a string, and then concatenate those two strings together.
And after that plus min, could you go plus and then put another string?
Kind of, probably. The problem is if you do something like, like average, then I would be slightly unsure as to what that would do. What's that going to do? So what it might do is add a float in an integer and then print it out as one number. So a better way to do it is to make sure that it does it as strings would be to put in either a null string like that, and then that way it will do the appending as strings rather than as numbers. That make sense? Because otherwise what it might do is add those two numbers and then convert the answer to a string, which is not what we want.
Is it sure which way it'll do?
Huh?
Is it sure which one it'll do? Or
I mean, it will always do exactly the same one, but I wouldn't be sure from looking at it which one that it would do. So if I wanted to make sure that it was doing one or the other, I would put in, I would force it to make sure that it does it as floats. Sorry, as strings. Let's just run it and see what it does. Yeah, see what it has done? It has added the two numbers together and then converted it to a string. So much better to put in, if you really want to, put in another bit of a string there, like that. And that will force it all to happen as strings. Okay, time to move on to the next thing. Okay, so this is just, we've got a small little bit of data here that we've created ourselves. Now we want to make a data set, right? So, if you can go up onto the course website and download this tunequeries.csv file, and I'll tell you where you need to put it, right? If you create a new processing sketch, say I just go in and I create a new sketch. So I have my new sketch here, right? First thing I want to do is save the sketch somewhere. So let me go in and I think I have this in my TT228 folder here, documents, projects. So save the sketch somewhere. When you save the sketch somewhere, you probably know this as well. Processing will create a folder for that sketch. So when I come into that projects TT228 folder, there's now a folder called dataset where I've saved that, and inside that folder is the dataset.pde file, the processing sketch. You all understand that? Okay. What you need to do is right click on this and then make a new folder in here called data. And it's inside that data folder that you need to put that file, the CSV file. So I'm here on the website. There's the CSV file. How do I just download a single file? I think if you click raw, it'll give me the file. Right click on the file, choose save as, and then find where you have that data file that you previously created. Documents, projects, processing examples, data set, the data folder, and then save the file in there. Can you do that, everybody?
Sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
Once you click raw, what do you do after that?
Sorry, right click on it in your browser and choose Save As. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. If anybody needs any help, just let me know. Yeah.
It will eventually come.
That theory is correct.
It doesn't end.
It's another one of those files that's processing
Even if he turns it off.
Store some stuff, kind of, yeah. I think it says what's your main kind of processing sketch file.
But if he turns it off, that laser is still going.
No, it loses energy.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay.
Brian, I
Yes.
don't have Wi-Fi, so how do I get this?
So somebody can just put it on a stick and then, yeah.
Are you Windows 7 or 8? If you're Windows 7, you can click it later on.
Okay, so what I want to do now is we're going to write some code to load the contents of that file into a processing sketch. So processing doesn't know that that's a CSV file. As far as processing is concerned, that's just a text file with basically data on every line in the text file. So when it loads the text file into the processing sketch, it will load it up into an array of strings. Alright, and then we're going to have to parse the array of strings to separate out the numbers. And we're not really interested in the 0 column, we're interested in the first and the second column in that text file. So watch what I do here. First of all, I'm going to write a method in processing. I'm just going to call this load data. And yeah, just here at the top level in my sketch, I'm going to make an int array for the, let's see, the iOS queries. So the first column is Android. Alright, so this is an int array with nothing allocated to it yet because I don't know how many data points I'm going to load. In actual fact, I could go and read the file and I know that I have 365 of them. But maybe I could have 2 years of data, so I don't know how much data I'm going to have. So this is how we load the file. So first of all, it gets loaded in as a string array. Cool. Just 1 second till I remember the command. It's load strings. And then we pass in the name of the file. What's the file called? TunePal. Cool. Okay, so what that will do is it will load the file line by line into a string array where each element in that string array corresponds to a line in the file. So that will have 365 elements in that string array. Is that okay with everybody? So load strings is just a processing method that's built in to allow you to load text files into your processing sketch. So, we'll say I want to basically extract out we've got 3 columns in there. So column number 0 is that number which goes from 1 up as far as 2.5, or sorry, 1 up as far as 365. The second column, or the next column, is the Android query. So I want to separate out, that data file into the Android queries and the iOS queries. So this is how you do it. For int I equals 0, semicolon, I is less than lines dot length, semicolon, I plus I, doesn't really matter in this example here. Okay, so that's going to iterate through the lines of text that I've just read in, and what I need to do is split that line on the comma. So processing actually has a command for splitting things on the comma, or for splitting things on anything. No, it's split. So this is an interesting command. Again, most modern languages have something like this because dealing with these types of text files is so common in programming that it's usually built into the language to handle it. Okay, so what actually is going to happen here is If I take the first line might be something like this. In fact, let's have a look at the first line. So the first line is 1, 96, 309. 1, 96, 309. That's the very first line of the file, or the 0th line in programming terms. So, just what's going to happen here is, first of all, the entire file gets loaded into that string array, and every element in that string array corresponds to a line in the file. So then I'm going to iterate through the file line by line, or iterate through the string array line by line. The next line there, which says strings data equals split lines I comma inverted commas and comma inverted commas, what that will do is take a single line and it will split it into another array with 3 elements in it. So it's another string array with 3 elements. And element number 0 in that data array is going to be this. Element number 1 will be 96 and element number 2 will be 309. Does everybody understand that? So if I was to print out data, it'll have 3 elements in it, corresponding to the 3 elements that are separated by commas on that single line.
Will it remember the character terms like Lua does or not?
Well, that's what this will do. When I do load strings, what that will do is it will parse the file, and every time it comes into a character return, it will create a new entry into that string array.
And you do that as well when you're making a string array. Have it remember character terms, and when you print out that string, it will do it itself.
Yeah, you could just put a character return in the forward, the slash n
It
thing.
doesn't actually remember if you type the string in like that.
How do you mean?
See when you're doing writing in a string?
Yeah.
In Lua, if you put an enter, then put like any of the
Oh,
string on
sure,
your line,
sure.
it will remember that. Can you do that
Yes.
in this?
I don't think so. Actually, I'll need to check. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I don't know if you can do strings like that. I think you have to do like slash n to put a character return into the string. Okay, what I want to do now is the Android queries. Android, A-D-R-O-I-D. Oh, sorry. Yeah. First of all, once I've loaded in my strings, then I know how many data points I have, right? So then I need to go and declare my Android array. A-N-D-R-O-I-D equals new int. What's the size of it going to be?
Length of lines.
Yes, exactly. So it will be lines.length.
Production equals single for
Where's that?
int.
Oh, sorry, int I equals 0. Very good. And then I want to say Android at position I is going to be equals data at position 1. Oh, sorry, this isn't exactly right, of course. The problem here is that data at position 1 is a string, and Android at position I is an integer. So I need to convert from a string to an integer. There's loads of ways to do this in processing. Maybe I'll show you the quick way. I think the quick way is just to do this. I think that will work. Yeah, it does work. But you know what? I'm pretty sure this only works in processing. So I'll show you the correct way to do it. Integer.parse. That's the Java way to do it. And probably if you learn the Java way, it would be better in the long term. Because when we're doing Java programs at the end, you'll already know the syntax. Alright, so this is how to do it properly. So again,
What's that exactly doing?
what that is doing is it's taking the string and it's converting it to an integer.
Okay. What if the string was, say, a character? What would it do?
It would probably put 0 in as the conversion.
Okay.
Because it can't convert.
Could you get it to convert it to ASCII?
The ASCII code for it.
Instead of the character, like say
Yeah.
from a C, say change to the ASCII.
Of course, you can do all of
Would
that.
that do it though?
No.
Why is it data brackets L or with 1?
Sorry, that should be I. Oh no, sorry, it's 1. It's 1. Yeah, why is it 1? Because it's the middle column, so we've got 0, 1, 2. We've got 3 columns. Cool. Is everybody following this okay? Yeah?
Say that should have parse
Right? Let me just make sure that that compiles. Hang on, try this. Try integer.parseInt. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that's why getting the data at one. It's hard coding the second element of data array.
Yes.
But you need to skip. Or skip.
I don't need to skip. Why do I need to skip?
So you have Android I, and it's in a for loop.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so each element in the Android array becomes the second column.
Is data a two-dimensional array?
Data is a one-dimensional array with 3 elements in it. So we'll have one element will hold I, the second element will hold 96, and the third element will hold 309. And then the next time around I read the subsequent line. When I read the next line, then data is going to get overwritten with the next line.
You're refreshing data.
Yeah, the data gets refreshed every time we're in the array. Okay, is that working okay for everybody?
Can you not read the file as storing as integers, since they are numbers in the file?
No, that split thing returns you always a string array. So then you have to convert the elements in the string array into integers. So that's what we're doing on the next line.
Because when you're doing string lines and load strings,
Yeah.
you can't load int.
No, you can't. You've got to load them as strings. Okay, everybody. Everybody following this? Cool. It's time to do the next thing. So now I have an array with 365 elements in it. Everybody ready? The next thing I want to do is I want to plot that data. So we'll plot it very simply. Inside the draw method, what I want you to do is just start off at the extreme left-hand side of the screen. Okay? Go over as far as we'll have 365 data points. And I want you to just plot them as a dot, like this. And is that okay with everybody? So just draw a point in wherever you have a data point. So the command to draw a point in processing is just point. And then you pass in the X and Y coordinate and it will plot a point. Is that okay with everybody? Everybody understand?
So it's like you're using the Android queries and the iPhone queries as X and Y coordinates?
Yes, exactly. That's what we need to do. We want to take the data and we want to plot it. So we plot them as points. First of all, you'll just get points. Afterwards, we'll change it so that we can plot them as lines and you'll see a kind of a trend. And then we'll draw in the average and we'll do some various other things as well.
What are we meant to do?
We've got to plot the data then. So the 2 data sets that we have for Android and iOS, everybody's pretty happy that you can plot them, you can read them, you can iterate through the array. So the next thing we need to do, and this requires a fair bit of thought, right? The next thing I need to do is I want to group that data by month. In other words, I want to know how many Android queries there were in January, how many there were in February, March, April, May, June, and so on. How would we do that? Sure, possibly. Number one thing I think you're going to need is another array which tells you how many days are in every month. Does that make sense? So you can have January's got 31 days in it. And then I know that the first 31 data points that I read in are going to go into the January bin. And then the next February, 27, 28 days in February are going to go into the February bin. And then what I want you to try and do is draw a bar chart, a month-by-month bar chart, so you can see Android queries this month, iOS queries this month. So that's kind of what tomorrow's lab is all about. Sound okay? So there's a bit of an algorithm and then there's a bit of drawing code. I think we'll leave it at that for today because we didn't take a break today. Is that okay with everybody? Cool. All right.
Look, no thanks whatsoever.